Hi, everybody. Looking forward to this Q&A, Crushing Doubts Q&A. Just got to get my Instagram going, and then we can dive into why I do these and what the questions are going to be and what my answers will be like, etc. All right, just getting Instagram going. Okay, we are ready. Welcome to Crushing Doubts Q&A, which is now Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. We had to adjust the time for some scheduling reasons, including my new groups, which are running really smoothly. It's been great to see people taking advantage of that. I will talk about the various things that you can utilize to work with me and get help from mind-body symptoms, which of course is why we're here to talk about mind-body symptoms and what you can do about them. So why do I do these Q&As? Well, when I was getting better from 8 years of chronic everyday back pain, what I found is that the absolute key was getting answers to my questions. The reason for that is if you do not know why you're having the symptoms that you're having, and you don't know why you can get rid of them, then your brain continues to do the same things and your body continues to do the same things. So let's talk about what mind-body symptoms are. This is any symptom that isn't caused for purely medical reasons. And that's going to include well over 99.99999% of all symptoms that you're going to have. Head to toe, if the body can already do that function, the mind can use it for its process. And so mind-body symptoms are incredibly prevalent in society. I can get into the reasons as to why that is. We'll talk all about it, but I wanted to outline a little bit about how I'm going to answer these questions. So your job is to ask any question. There is no stupid question. I absolutely promise you. The whole idea is to get answers to your questions. And if that happens, it can change what goes on in your brain, and mind, which changes what goes on in your entire body. So I'm going to say hi to a couple people. Then we're going to talk about my column system and how to answer questions. Let me say hi to some people first. Big Red Bass and Throttle Torque, thank you for joining us on Instagram. Rita, very good to see you here. Rita is a coach in the mind-body community who's trained in my system to help with mind-body conditions, which I call the column system. I'll explain more about that in a second. Sophia, just like that, has joined us here as well. Thank you for joining us on Instagram. Now, on YouTube, Kasim says, hi, Dan and everyone. Very good to see you, Kasim. I see you've got a question in, and I'll get to that very shortly. Hillel says, hi, Dan and all. Great to see you, Hillel. I see you've got a question as well, and I will get to that shortly. And Laura, I see you're here as well on YouTube. Looking forward to getting your questions answered. So Rita says, hi, Dan and Crushing Doubt Club. Love that. We really are a nice community. And one of the things I want to highlight, and this, the mind-body community does great work. But one of the things that I like to look out for is I don't want anything that we talk about to inspire doubt, to make you think that there's any more reason that you can't get better than you came in with in the first place. Everyone's here to lower the doubt and start to feel more confident. And what can often happen, even with the best of intentions, is that if we're not paying attention to doubt, people can talk about mind-body symptoms and they'll help one person with one kind of problem without realizing that the same answer can cause doubt for the other person. And so I want you to follow up. If anything causes doubt that you can get better, you've got to raise that question because we have to bring that down. Now, let's talk about what my column system is. Catherine Toomer, thanks for joining us here. It's been a while since I've seen you. It's really nice to see your face and name. Let me know if you have any questions. So my system is called the column system. And I based it off of when I started working with people after getting 8 years of back pain to relent. Really, once it really hit, it took about 3 days. Overall, it took about 3 months because I had to soak in the information from Dr. John Sarno's books and investigate more and get my questions answered. But when that happened, the symptoms finally broke, especially when I was totally certain that this is what it was. That this was a mind-body symptom and I could get rid of it. 8 years of chronic everyday back pain, or seemingly chronic everyday back pain. And it went away in 3 days once I was absolutely certain, which is often what happens. It can go away very fast. So the column system got its name from when I started working with people after that. I realized I had to change my practice, and I would give people a sheet of paper and I'd say, divide it into 3 columns, because this helps us to see what are the 3 different parts of mind-body experience. And to make it really simple, the columns relate to feelings, thinking, and relationship with yourself. The emotions column is about your feeling, the doubt column is about your thinking, and the power column is about your relationship with yourself. Now, these columns, they help to describe symptoms. There are different functions to the symptoms. There's different reasons that doing what you do there can help. There's different ways of looking at symptoms to understand which column to be working in, and I'm going to answer all of that as we go. So I'll let the questions do the talking with that. As I answer questions, you'll see what are these columns all about. All right. Catherine Toomer says, so very, very nice to be here. Thank you. It is so great to see you, Catherine. All right, let's dive in with some questions, and then we'll do some talking about the columns as needed. At various points, I'll talk about the options available on my website to get help from me. All right. Now, I do want to say, though, at the outset, that includes that if you really need my help, one of the very best options is my book, which is available on Amazon, Crushing Doubt. It's the most comprehensive resource I think that is available in the mind-body community. It describes anything and everything, including all of the things that other practitioners in the mind-body field say and why they say it. And secondly, I have a $100 membership, and this really is a great deal. It's $100, and you get to come to 3 meetings a week. Those are Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern, Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, all different times so that people across the world can utilize this. You get all of the meetings for just $100 a month. So if you're interested in that, go to my website, www.crushingdoubt.com. You can sign up for that. I'll talk more about what's available there. Let's get to some questions, and we'll answer. I'm going to answer in a way that shows you what are these columns. How do you use them? All right. Luann Davidson, thank you for joining us on Instagram. It's Davison, not Davidson. Sorry about that. All right. Kasim has a question. For the last few weeks, I have been experiencing severe fight or flight triggers. For example, the car in front of me didn't turn left on the green instead. Kasim is a bus driver. They stopped and the light turned red, so I missed the light, and that triggered my anger. I began to yell at the driver. I almost got out and confronted him. So, are these mini trauma activations or my central nervous system on high alert? This is a great question that could help a lot of people. So, I would say, Kasim, yes, I think these are mini trauma activations. I don't think this is really your central nervous system on high alert per se. I mean, yes, your central nervous system is on high alert because trauma activation is a high alert. But the reason I like the phrase mini trauma activations better than central nervous system being on high alert is that when we talk about the central nervous system being on high alert, it almost just makes it sound like you're on autopilot and there's nothing you can do about it. Whereas a mini trauma activation, why are we calling it a mini, first of all? So Kasim is using this very wisely because a trauma activation is a very, very big emotional response to a present day event that harkens back to very traumatic events of the past. And it leads to big emotional upheaval. What Kasim's describing here isn't huge emotional upheaval. We all feel this way in certain ways, but at certain times and not others. So it's mini in that it's not related to the biggest trauma activations, but it gets him going. It gets under his skin. It reminds him of things from the past and has him kind of emotionally on edge. So that's why I really like this phrase, mini trauma activations. Now, let's talk about this from a columns perspective. What does this mean? All right, so the emotions column is about the onset and uptake of symptoms. And Kasim, you could look at this as a symptom. It's a symptom onset. It's temper. Where does it come from? Now, of course, it makes sense. I get why you were annoyed about that driver. I get how you could be annoyed within the context of your job and all the things that you have to do. But there was an emotional response there. And even an emotional response is a symptom of sorts. So that's another way of thinking about this. We could think of it as a mini trauma activation, which is like activating something in your power column where we have a relationship with ourselves and you're upset about something. And it also could be that something really bothered you in the emotions column and led to a symptom. Now, the good news is it's leading directly to an emotional symptom. That to me is an advancement over it led to a headache or it led to dizziness or some other symptom or tinnitus, whatever it is. It could be head to toe. Any symptom could happen. But if it's happening emotionally, you've actually made progress. Now what I want you to do is to recognize in the emotions column, what was it that upset you most about that? Now, again, I get it. I get why you'd be upset, but there's something very specific about that. I'm going to give you an example. It could be, I'm not saying this is it, but it could be that you're looking at that person and you're thinking, I hate it when people only think about themselves, or I hate it when they're not paying attention to the world around them, or I hate it when they're having some emotional need and it leads them to be not available. Those are three different ideas that all fit with this situation. What I'd encourage you to do, Kasim, is to look for what's the emotions column activation there. Mini trauma activations, where it gets you going like that. I'd look in the emotions column. For big trauma activations, we're going to look in the power column and see how was this disruptive in a way that was reminiscent of your whole emotional being. That's where the power column comes in. So that's my answer there to Kasim. But what I want to say to Kasim and to everyone is these are just my first answers. Good mind-body treatment is a longer conversation because it all depends on what you're thinking. So if I help you, understand something, that changes your thinking. If I don't help you shift your thinking, it's not going to do much. So I want you to do follow-up. If you're like, well, okay, that helps me. I hear what you're saying, but I need you to know this information, or I need to know more about this. Ask your follow-up questions. All right. Now, in addition to that, try to treat this Q&A like it's not just a conversation between me and whoever I'm talking to at that moment. It is a conversation for us all. Every single part of the conversation should be adding to your understanding. And that is certainly my hope. All right. Kasim, let's do follow-up as needed. Now, let me talk a little bit about these columns. Then I'll get into Hillel's question. So I talked about the emotions column. The emotions column, one way to recognize when you need to use that column, and really they're just three different ideas. They're three different tools for how to deal with mind-body experience. The emotions column is for acute onsets and upticks in symptoms. The beginning, onset, or the uptick. It was there, but then it went way up. And what Kasim's talking about is like, if the symptom is irritability or anger, that went up. And it went up at a certain moment. So that's why it's emotions column. It was an acute onset or uptick of a symptom. Let's look at that. Let's learn more about it. And if you get to the specifics, what ends up happening is the symptom can calm down because you now understand. Those symptoms come from what Dr. Sarno called a symptom distraction, where the symptom itself is there to cover over the emotional experience. Now, this is interesting in the case of what I talked about with Kasim, because the symptom was an emotion, but sometimes one emotion covers another. And so even anger, one anger can cover another kind of anger. So I think, Kasim, you were angry about that, but that was actually covering over a deeper level anger, like people are inconsiderate. They don't think about me, or they don't think about other people. Let's see what you think about that. All right. Now that's the emotions column. The doubt column, that covers what our thought processes are, and that applies not to acute onsets and upticks in symptoms. That applies to very stubborn symptoms that just stay in the same place. Because if we think the same thing over and over, like I have an injured shoulder, or I have a herniated disc and that's causing pain, which, by the way, it doesn't. We can get into that as needed. Then we're thinking the same things. And if we think the same things, our physiology stays the same. All right. So for the doubt column, we've got to change the thinking. For the emotions column, we've got to discover the emotional experience. For the power column, that's where we go to work on what we do with all that emotional understanding. The power column is where you make adjustments to change your relationship with yourself and whatever you're going to do there. So 3 different columns for 3 different types of symptom presentations. And in the emotions column, it's to get rid of the symptom distraction. In the doubt column is to get rid of the symptom protection. The doubt feels like it's got to protect you. You're in danger. We got to convince it that no, there's no danger here, and it will calm down. And in the power column, the symptoms are looking to get you a communication. They want you to know something about yourself. That's why self-alignment is so important. If we self-align, then we can get to whatever the communication is, and the symptoms aren't needed anymore. Okay, Rudy, Rudemaster27, thank you for joining us on Instagram. Please do let me know if you have any questions. All right, I'll continue answering these questions in the columns light. Hillel said, we just wrapped up a big and special family event for my mom. I've been in pain all day, feeling drained and exhausted. I'm sorry about that, Hillel, but we'll get to this. I honestly don't know when this nightmare of a life will end. Okay, well, Doubt is high. I get it, but we are going to help you with this. Now, this is an interesting thing. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at about a 3. So, what this shows is very persistent symptoms, even when they're low level, can just gnaw at you, and they can get you to a point where it feels like a true nightmare. And I get it. We want to have no symptoms. I want to encourage you. The goal of mind body work is to have no seemingly chronic symptoms. Even at a 3, you shouldn't be there all that time, right? So we're gonna get to this, Hillel. You also should be able to control acute symptoms a lot more, but it is the human condition to have some symptoms. And sometimes when those symptoms stay for a bit, we start to have doubt, and then they stay longer. So we're going to keep working at this, Hillel. And now the next thing you said is, I'd really appreciate some support and encouragement right now. Thank you so much. So here's what I'll say. I can say lots of things that are encouraging, Hillel, but one that I would say really fits with you right now is the way your symptoms are presenting like a power column symptom. Why do I say that? Well, if intense symptoms happen for 2 reasons. They happen either because doubt, especially in the form of fear, is way high, or they happen because you're having a big emotional upheaval, much bigger than what I was talking about with Kasim. You don't have either of those. What you do have is a persistent symptom hanging around at a lower level. That's a symptom plateau. That is an indication of a power column symptom. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons this is great news, Hillel, is that in the column system, there's a flow to it. And you can kind of tell where you are in the process based on that flow. It's bring down doubt, learn about the emotions, flow into power. And where I see you being at is we've brought doubt down enough. You still have doubt. It's the human condition to have some of that. And I know you still have some that's not totally resolved, but it's low enough that we can now do the work in what I would call the 2 emotional columns. The emotions column for awareness, the power column for adjustments. And you even know a lot about your emotional life. What you don't know, and this is always, I shouldn't say it's always been. At the beginning of our work, it was about doubt. That was the big problem. Things had to make sense for you to feel that you could get where you need to go. So we're going to make sense of this moment too. Now you're at a point where the flow has gone all the way to power. And part of what that means is that we have to help you get convinced that you can live a powerful life. So when you say, I honestly don't know when this nightmare of a life will end, essentially what you're saying in a columns language is that you don't believe you can ever get to power, which has been the sore spot for you for a long time now since we've gotten doubt down. That's the part we need to crack. And we're going to. There's no problem that can't be resolved in the column system of mind-body experience. So we can do it. But I actually hear this as good news, even though you get worried about it. But that's just because you're particularly worried about this kind of idea. Hillel, let's go from there and see if that was encouraging enough, or if you need more, or whatever you think about it. Okay. Nox Flamma, thank you for joining us here. Good to see you. Okay. Rudy says pain detective. And then he said, or do you prefer pain professor? I love them both, but pain detective sounds great to me. As you know, Sherlock Holmes was a great hero of mine in my childhood. And really, I do think of the symptoms are giving us information. So let's be detectives about it. Let's figure out what they're saying. Okay? All right. Hilarina, thank you for joining us here on Instagram. Amit Goswami, thank you for joining us as well. Okay. Question coming in from Nox Flamma. What would you say is the latest you've learned about mind-body syndrome, TMS, and recovering from it, etc.? Okay, so I am always learning. I'm reading things. I'm thinking about things. I'm even experiencing things. I would say that one of the latest things that I've learned, it fits with some things I've talked about before, but one of the latest things I learned is the paramount importance of breaking down the difference between what I would call regular mind-body symptoms and a neuroplastic feedback loop. People present in different ways and they have different mind-body experience. And I think one way to think about it is that, and by the way, the columns can treat all of this. Everybody can get help. But for people who have what I would call regular mind-body symptoms, they're not operating in quite the same way as the people who have a neuroplastic feedback loop. And I would say, what are the percentages? I don't want to give percentages. You know why? Because then the people with neuroplastic feedback loops get all freaked out. It is a lower percentage than the regular ones, which is why regular has that term. But there's thousands that have both of these. And in regular mind-body symptoms, you can do work in all three of the columns. And you can shift around in the work, and there's just much more flexibility. And a lot of the times the symptoms go away fast. In a neuroplastic feedback loop, though, neuroplastic feedback loops have three main things that have to happen, and they all have to happen or you do not have it. In regular mind-body symptoms, you could have 2 out of 3. It's not going to be a neuroplastic feedback loop unless you have all three of these. And they are a very big emotional event around the time of onset, very close to the time of onset. A physical event that scared the crap out of you in some way, that convinced you that there was a real injury, making doubt go way high. And then a very obsessive thought process that goes on because of it. But it's very important that, and again, I knew about both Nox Flamma, but one of the things that I've learned in my latest learning is just how important it is for people to understand which one of these do you have. They're both mind-body, and they work in the same way. But essentially what happens is the neuroplastic feedback loop leads to an overactive central nervous system response in general. And it makes the symptoms more stubborn and stay there for longer, and it makes the mind-body work seemingly less effective at the beginning. But it actually works along the same continuum. If we treat it the same way and keep doubt low enough, eventually you start to move from a neuroplastic feedback loop into regular mind-body symptoms. So it's really just a continuum. All right, that's just one idea, Nox Flamma, but do some follow-up as needed on that. Let's see what you think. Laura Brown, I can't remember if I said hi to you or not. I may have missed that, so I want to make sure I say hi to you. All right. Okay, we've got Laura, which may even be Laura Brown. I don't know, on YouTube. Hi, Dan. Symptoms in my mid-back were minimal for 2 weeks. I was so happy I was feeling better. Okay, that's a good start. I sense a then or a but. Then, okay. Then I went and got a massage just for relaxation, and now the symptoms are acting up for days. Just wondering why this happened. Okay, so I'm going to give you my idea of why this happened, but ultimately it only matters what you think. So I want to see if this makes sense to you. What happened there to me is that you had gotten these things under control. Then you went to get a massage. And the thing is, anything we do physically could potentially be a doubt trigger. A doubt trigger is something from the environment that raises our doubt. So when you go in for a massage and they press on certain parts, you know what's going to happen? I'm not saying a massage is bad, by the way. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't get a massage. But we need to have you be thinking the right thinking while you do it. I always say it doesn't matter what you do. It matters what you're thinking while you do it. What happens when people push in a massage is it's gonna feel sore. And so I think what it did is it probably got you convinced that you were hurting more again. Even though you went in for relaxation and it may have even felt good in a certain way, it brought attention back to, am I having these symptoms or not? And there's something I call attentional mind-body experience, where you can't stop thinking about the symptoms. I think this just got you thinking about it again. When that calms down, this will go right back where it was. You'll be getting it back to minimal. One thing I can guarantee you is we can get it back to minimal and gone, no matter what, even with this. But why did this happen? I just think it was a doubt trigger. Now, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think. So I want your feedback on that. Come back to me and tell me what you think about that idea. All right? Thanks, Laura. Susan Sereno says, hi, Dan and everyone. Very good to see you, Susan. All right. Just scrolling down to see. All right. Okay, I'm going to go back to Instagram for another question. Rudy says, really had a bad night last night. Sorry about that, Rudy. Stomach issues. Man, I feel like going to be seen. I feel like going to be but I got past it. Problem is, I'm so sensitized right now. Okay. Hard to eat. I see. It's like the stomach has a brain of its own. Oh, it's very interesting you say that, Rudy, because actually the second most concentrated area of neurons in the body is the gut. So it is like a second brain. It's why we say, follow your gut. Think with your gut. What does your gut tell you? Because there actually is intelligence there. So I think you're right. The stomach does have a brain of its own, and something's going on for you there. Now, you said for me, that's my worst symptom. Anything else I can handle, but that one is the worst for me. Well, as many people know, um, I have a phobia about that kind of thing, getting really sick, especially in the upper GI kind of stuff. And it can be the worst. We all have a hierarchy of symptoms we would rather have. And sometimes we actually engage in what I call mind body bargaining, where we're like, you know what? I'll take back pain over this. I don't want to have this. And I actually encourage everybody, don't bargain with the symptoms. Let's get full surrender. But Rudy, something was going on there. And this is what I would call an emotions column response also. Something big was happening there. So you couldn't stomach it. It made you sick. Something was going on there. And one of the reasons I say this will give you all a chance to neutralize symptoms and not have to suffer so much. I have alleviated a lot of stomach kind of symptoms by recognizing what was bothering me in that moment. So I want to look for that. Now, Rudy then said, I remember reading somewhere that Dave Clark says that you can have gut issues with TMS. TMS, by the way, is what Sarno called mind-body symptoms, tension myositis syndrome. Absolutely. It's a very, very common place to have them. All right. Now, let's do follow-up as needed, but I would look at the emotions, Rudy. You can get relief, and you can even get it today. I want to get it even earlier next time, but I want to get your relief. VB Ness, MB, thank you for joining us here. Okay, I'll get to questions more on Instagram soon, but I'm going to get to Susan's question on YouTube. I had extremely difficult pain, burning pins and needles last night. Seems like last night was tough for people. Even I had raised symptoms last night. I wonder what's going on. In the middle of the night, I had all three doubts, meaning level 1, level 2, and level 3 doubt. Level 1 doubt is this mind body or not? Level 2 doubt is my mind body symptom harder to cure than others? And level 3 is, can I do it? Self-doubt. I couldn't figure out what emotions were causing it. Maybe it's just become predictive coding. I'm finding this so difficult. Today I have symptoms, but not as bad as at night. Okay, so let's jump back, Susan. This is not predictive coding. It's not. And I'll tell you what's happening there. Doubt is trying to pull you away from the emotions column. Remember the flow. Bring down doubt, learn about emotions, flow into power. You are at the stage where we are really getting ready to look at the emotions column and find out what's in there. And when you say maybe it's just become predictive coding, that is doubt trying to convince you there's nothing here. You can't discover anything in the emotions. It's just doubt. I know you're terrified about this. I know you think you can't do this, but you can. And Susan's in the group. So Susan, on Monday, come ready to start building out your emotional themes column. You have no idea how helpful this is going to be to you, because then when you're having those symptoms, similar to what I was saying to Rudy, you can actually figure out what that emotion is faster and get relief. That's what we got to do. Okay? Kasim said, when you said, look at the emotions column, one of my themes is other people's decisions can greatly affect me. Oh boy. Like my birth mother deciding to give me up greatly affected my life. Oh, Kasim, this sounds right on. I'm at the mercy of other people's decisions. That's it. Okay? Now let's think about this. If you can be aware of that, then there's something you can do to make an adjustment in that emotional experience. And like you could say to yourself, you know what? Even though they affected me that way, there are certain things they can't affect me on. This is a power column kind of move, Kasim, where your relationship with yourself gets worked on. And you can say, okay, you can keep me from getting through the light, but you can't dominate my life. My mom giving me up, that has dominated my life. But these other decisions don't have to. I have much more power than that now. And that could calm you down. But I do think this makes a lot of sense that spiked something. Okay? Hillel said 0 to 10, I meant on energy level. Okay, well, that makes that 3 a lot less appealing than what I was thinking. I thought you were saying a 3 in terms of not that bad symptoms. A 3 out of 10 in energy level, that's low. That's tiring. And Hillel, we're going to work on this. We are. But at the same time, what this means then is we got to go back, because I was thinking there's a low-level plateau happening. To me, this then speaks to an emotions column experience. Why? Because actually there's a high-level symptom. and it's happening around emotional things. You said that this was in relation to a special family event. Going back to this for your mom. I still think this is power column related because the power column relates to emotional experience. But I think you feel like there's no way out. You're always going to have to deal with your family, and it's exhausting, literally. All right. Now, Hello then said, I meant the scale as a rating of my mental state. Oh, okay. So there's even a different way of rating it, but still not good. But the symptoms are just as you described. I'm pretty sure it's all TMS because I feel completely dead inside. The symptoms aren't excruciating. Okay, so power column symptom, but your mental state is related to this big emotional event. Okay, you're rephrasing your response. I meant the scale as a rating of my mental state, but the symptoms are just as you described. Yep. They aren't excruciating, but they're painful and very bothersome. I'll try doing some Nicole Sachs style journaling and see what comes up. Okay, you can do that, Hillel, but I want to encourage you. To me, there's an even better place to go, which is you could use that journaling. But let's think about what options are you thinking you don't have that you actually do have. There are changes you can make in relation to what's going on with your family, and it's time to do it. The communication from the symptoms is telling you got to make a change. Got to live differently. Okay? All right. Back to Instagram. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. If I did, by the way, just ask it again because I really don't want to miss anybody here. Nox Flama says, all these lives are posted to your YouTube for rewatching. They are. They're also posted to Instagram for rewatching. Okay, so they'll be on there. They're on my profile. Okay, Catherine Toomer says, I have symptoms of fatigue, feelings of drudgery, big anxiety each time I address working to declutter my house. I know this is power column stuff. I still seem to have at least leftover fear of making decisions, any decisions, leftover from distant fear, past of fear of being unfaithful to the right decision. Part of what became my OCD coping mechanism, coping with ultimately fear of hell. But let's see. Any response is welcome. Thanks as always, Dr. Dan. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, so I'll say this, Catherine. There is something important going on, and it's definitely power related. And the reason I say that is your doubt is low enough. You know about your emotional experience, but when people are having obsessional thinking, what that means is they're not at peace with themselves. The obsession is a signal. I'm not at peace with myself. So the question is, how can we get you to peace with yourself about decisions? I saw a video once. There's a woman named Ellen Langer who I love. I mentioned her in my book with a particular study that I loved, but she has some other things that she says that I really love, like the 2/3 rule. About how when you're trying to do something 2/3 of the way through it, that's as far as you're going to want to go. So set the bar even higher and you'll get further. But in this case, the thing that I'm thinking about, Catherine, is that Ellen Langer talks about decisions. And what she says is, stop worrying about making the right decision. Start living in such a way where you just let yourself make any decision and then you live with that decision, because there's going to be good things in every decision. And so Ellen Langer said this. I totally agree with her. We could get you to peace if we could recognize this isn't about what decision you make. It's about what you do after you make the decision. If we can change that focus, you're going to be more in power. You're going to realize there is no right decision. There are just decisions, and I'll pick a path, and then I will live with that. And I'll see what's good about it and enjoy that, and I'll fix the hard parts. All right, Catherine, let's go from there. But that would be a way of getting you more in power. Okay. Nox Flama says, you always articulate and elaborate eloquently. Always come back here to learn. Thank you, Nox Flama. Thanks, Dan. Your work has really helped me. I actually feel I can go back to work now. Amazing. Love that. And anything you want to talk about, my friend, I'm here. All right. But thank you for the very kind words. Rita said, some massage therapists are truly terrible and untrained. Don't ever go to massage massage envy. I don't know what that is. Better yet, just don't get a massage. Okay, listen, here's what I would say. You can get a massage if you want, but to do it, you got to be thinking the right things. Don't go there thinking I'm injured and that'll help. Don't go there thinking my muscles hurt and they're going to get that out. Go in instead and say, you know what? I'm going to give myself something that feels good. And you know what? If it hurts, I'm going to recognize that as emotional tension underneath. I'm not going to get scared about it. It's really all about what you think as you do it. Okay? So let's keep working at that. Nox Flamma then says, can you expand on examples of what a significant physical event regarding neuroplastic feedback loops? It doesn't actually have to be that significant of a physical event. What it has to do is be very convincing that you injured yourself. There has to be enough that convinces you injured yourself. It could be as simple as rolling an ankle. When I actually did have one of these neuroplastic feedback loops, and it came, I'm not proud of this moment, but it did happen. I kicked a garbage can at one point. I was mad, and it hurt, but it got me very convinced that something, that I was injured. But it happened at a time where there was a huge emotional event going on around one of my birthdays. I can talk more about it if people would find that helpful. And then the obsessions also were very much there. So I had all three. But if I hadn't kicked that garbage can, I wouldn't have had the physical side. And then I probably would have just been dealing with a big trauma activation and regular mind-body symptom. All right. Okay. Karen Isaacs, good to see you here. My husband listened to 3 hours of Sarno books. Leg pain eased. I overheard him tell people it's criminal that this info. Oh my God, this is exciting, Karen. It's criminal that this info is not taught in medical school. He's angry. Doctors don't ask what's going on in our lives. Then tells me his pain eased because of vitamins he's taken for one day. Okay, before I celebrated too soon, Karen. I'm out of breath walking, especially if with others, and talking, thinking I'm just out of shape but can swim, do pool exercises for hours. Okay, I'm going to get to that in a second, but I just want to address this. We all have people in our lives, even people who really are very mind-body informed and understand what's happening. We've got people in our lives who they deny these things, or sometimes they go in and out of their agreement. So many people in my family would say to me, we love what you do. Yep, we get what you do. We think it's great. And then they'd say something that they'd be like, yeah, I just think that I have a food allergy. And I'd be like, if you understood what I do, why would you be saying such a thing? So Karen, I can identify with you about that, but I want to encourage you over time, when you start to hear these things, he's got to be working on this. Nobody has powers of denial that are so strong that once it's gone in some, it just evaporates entirely. They can lose it for a moment, but it's not going to stay that way. Now, jumping back to your other question, I'm out of breath walking, especially with others, and talking, thinking I'm just out of shape, but can swim, do pool exercise for hours. So what you're saying is, like your husband, you're recognizing that you can have symptoms, and naturally we attribute it sometimes to something purely physical, when the reality is it's almost certain to be mind-body. So let's look at that. Karen Isaac says, what is a neuroplastic feedback loop? Okay, first of all, you don't have that, Karen, so let's start there. But a neuroplastic feedback loop is basically when a mind-body symptom and a big trauma activation combine to get the central nervous system really out of whack for a while. And usually that, if it was dealt with right from the start in ways that people understood, it would usually last maybe a couple months. But what ends up happening is people don't know about it. It gets scarier and scarier, and it tends to collect symptoms. So normal mind-body experience doesn't usually collect symptoms. What happened with me when I hurt my foot, I'll put in quotes because I didn't actually hurt it all that much, it tried to expand into my other foot, and then it tried to expand into my hands. Now, I know enough about this that I didn't let that happen. But most people don't know enough about this, and it just expands and starts taking over things. Rita is a great example of this. That's what happened to her. It went throughout her body, and now she's fine. So you can get these things under control. But a neuroplastic feedback loop is essentially a mind-body symptom that is particularly resistant because of those three things I mentioned: the big emotional event, the obsessions, and fear being super, super high related to some kind of physical event. And it can lead to symptom collection and just things staying longer. Okay, hope that's a clear explanation. All right. Laura says, yes, I was definitely sore, and then it stayed sore for days. So I was thinking if this was really mind body. See, doubt loves to pounce on anything it can. So, Laura, you didn't do anything wrong for going to a massage therapist. But I always want to encourage you guys, watch out for doubt. It's going to look for places to pounce. And Laura says, so doubt did creep in. Yep. It found a place. All right. So it found a place, but now you'll bat it back and you'll get back to where you were. All right. Laura said, if I purchase the group for $100 a month, does it renew on its own? Or do I have to repurchase next month? And what if I can't afford the next month? Can I cancel at any time and join again when I can? Okay. So it does renew. However, you can shut off the renew. You can be away for up to 3 months. So if you purchase the group for 100, you can pause the membership for 3 months. I do have to verify this is true, but I think according to my tech people, I think this is true. You can pause for that amount of time. Here's the other thing. If it charges you and you decide you didn't want to use it, I'll just refund it. I'm not here to steal anybody's money. I want you to use the resources, and I want you to spend the money where you can. You also can come back, yes, anytime. You can come and go. It's another benefit to this group. But again, what this is, and let's just talk about the resources on my website. It's my website's www.crushingdoubt.com. To get my book, you should go to Amazon. And if you've gotten relief from that, please, please, please leave a positive Amazon review. It encourages so many more people to buy it. They see, oh, wow, this many people read this. This many people thought it was good. It's a big help. On my website, though, you can get direct help from me. You can sign up for these $100 memberships to come to 3 meetings a week. As I mentioned, they're Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern, Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern. I also do have some other groups that are capped. They're smaller groups. The cost is more, but if people want to inquire, please let me know. It's dan@crushingdoubt.com. My seminars are also on there. Those are particularly useful for somebody who wants a very curated experience, telling all about mind-body experience and why you can conquer these things and what are the columns without reading the book, because sometimes you can do both, but sometimes people just don't do as well with a book. By the time they've gotten to the end of the book, they're like, wait, what did I just read? And the seminars lay it right out there for you. So those are some of the great resources available on my website. Please do check it out. Okay. Laura said, your channel is the one that's made a positive impact on my symptoms and doubt and have made some some improvements. I added great. I've been to a lot of channels for Mind Body, so I know the group will help me greatly. Oh, wow. Yours is the best channel. Thank you, Laura. That's very, very high praise. And I'm so glad. One of the reasons the reason I do any of this stuff, it's all the stuff that I wish had been out there when I was suffering. So I'm really glad it's having that impact on you. Thank you. And I do look forward to working with you if you decide to do that anytime. Sheer, thank you for joining us here. Just saw you recently. Good to see you here. Scotty Styles, thanks for joining. Jana Emsk, thank you for joining as well. Scotty Styles, thank you for joining here. I missed a lot of people joining. Sarah Jones and Maria Llewellyn, thank you for joining as well. Okay, I'm going to get to a bunch of questions on Instagram. Then I got one more on YouTube, and we'll probably be wrapping up shortly. But let's make sure I didn't miss anybody. Again, if I did, I do apologize. Just ask your question again. Okay, VB Ness said, working on belief, but inflammation appearing all over. Is that mind body, or should I treat the gut imbalance? Oh, gut imbalance in brain and stinging with redness inflammation. Okay, so VB Ness, one thing I would ask is if you've been to see a medical doctor and they either can't figure out what's going on, or they've given you a diagnosis that's one of these diagnoses that has been debunked in the mind-body community, where it's like, no, you don't have to worry about that. Then the very great likelihood and probably certainty is that it's mind-body. Inflammation is usually mind-body. It can happen for other reasons, but it's very rare for that to happen. And even when that happens, inflammation that happens for purely medical reasons usually goes down very quickly. The body heals. So I would say that what you're saying, if you've seen doctors and there's nothing serious going on at all, then treat it like mind body, because I'm sure that it is. Now, let's see. I think you had a follow-up to that. Nope, that was it. Okay, so follow-up is needed, though. All right. Let's see. Rudy said, mind-body bargaining. Never thought about it that way. Yeah, it's a very common thing. We're so afraid of symptoms that we think, oh, okay, well, I'll take this, but not this. Full surrender. Occasionally, I'll say, fine, you can itch on my shoulder, but I don't let it get farther than that. Knox Flamma said, regarding regular TMS symptoms, how do those distinguish themselves from a neuroplastic feedback loop? And is this discussed in your book? It is discussed in my book, yes. I felt I needed to discuss everything that needed to be discussed. I understand even more about it now, but everything I wrote in my book is entirely accurate and really got to the heart of things. How do they distinguish themselves from a neuroplastic feedback loop? One of the ways they distinguish themselves is, first of all, acute onsets and upticks of symptoms that come and go. That's automatically regular mind-body symptoms. A neuroplastic feedback loop doesn't come and go. It's like there. So what we're really talking about is how do you distinguish between doubt column symptoms that are regular and neuroplastic feedback loops? Emotions column symptoms that come and go, that's regular. Low-level plateaus, that's power column symptoms. That's regular. We're talking about distinguishing between doubt column symptoms and neuroplastic feedback loops. And the primary ways that you distinguish between that is, are you collecting symptoms? Because if you're collecting symptoms, that sounds more like a neuroplastic feedback loop. Is the symptom really, really stubborn when you do things in the mind-body world that should help? Like if your doubt is actually pretty low and yet the symptoms are persisting, you may have gotten into that neuroplastic feedback loop. But one of the main hallmarks that you really need to look at is, was there a major emotional event and a true physical event that could pair themselves and scare you in that way? Those are the ways you can distinguish, okay? Catherine Drimmer says, oh, yes, I've heard Ellen Langer say that. Thank you. You are welcome. Use it. She's right. Rudy says, spoken like a pain detective and pain professor. Yes, I've got both now. Rudy says, you're so right when it comes to emotion. There isn't individual that I think about a lot. That isn't really bad situation. I think that's what causes me to even lose sleep at night. Where did I miss that? I missed something in there, but I understand what you're saying, Rudy. The phrase, don't lose any sleep over it. It's about the fact that we do lose sleep over bad situations. Rudy said, this talk to text, I tell you. Yep. It often comes up kind of garbled. I get it. Okay. All right. We're going to jump back over to Karen Isaacs. She said, I'm working with a nutritionist, not losing weight, but eat clean 90% of the time. Active in warmer months. The nutritionist told me I'm in good shape and fit. I started to cry, not believing her. Told her, wish my husband was more of a cheerleader. She wants me to believe, be my own cheerleader. Good goal for when I start group in September. I totally agree with that, Karen. One thing we're going to keep working on is to get you to feel so good in your relationship with yourself that you won't need that much. By the way, I'm not saying you need too much. That's not what I'm saying at all. But, I think sometimes when we've been hurt and we've had a lot of trauma, we really wish other people could deliver better than they do. And one of the things that can protect us is to know that we can do a really good job with ourselves to have a good relationship with ourselves. And that's what we can do. And then we can really believe that good things are happening. All right. Susan Serena said, lately I've had the burning pain every night and I've had squeezing feelings. I'm so stressed about it. I don't understand this. I have back pain during the day and some burning, but I have to admit and then you didn't follow up fully with this. But Susan, when you say, I don't understand this, doubt is pulling you back. Remember, you may not know what the emotion is, but you actually should understand this. I mean that positively. You know what this is. At least you know what I'm going to say about it, because I've said this many times. Doubt is trying to pull you away from emotional understanding, and it's trying to convince you can't understand emotionally. But this is the step you're on. I say this often in group. This is the step you're on. That's where you need to go next, is to establish that you actually can get to a place where you understand your emotions. I'm going to take a few more questions and we'll wrap up from here. Knox Flamma says, you mentioned symptom collection. Would then fibromyalgia-like symptoms be neuroplastic loops rather than regular TMS symptoms? No, I think of fibromyalgia as an emotions column experience because that comes and goes a lot of the time. Now, I suppose If it's there all the time and then it collects new symptoms and stays there, that could be a kind of neuroplastic feedback loop kind of thing. But that's not how I hear fibromyalgia described. There's a lot of coming and going and symptoms jumping around. That sounds more emotions column to me. Okay, Catherine Toomer says, Langer's comment about decisions lends itself to a good perspective rather than being literally true, I think. I heard her talk about how her house burning down ended up having wonderful life-changing effects over time. So, yeah, I mean, look, a lot can happen, but I think it's about being at peace with the fact that we can't know everything and we make the best decision at the time and then we live well afterwards. Okay, Scotty Styles says, yes, a neuroplastic feedback loop. I've had many. Some of the most bizarre and instantaneous symptoms that must have been triggered by emotional phenomena were wrist pain and foot pain separately. Thank you for sharing that, Scotty. And Scotty, by the way, is doing really well, including physically, to my knowledge. So he's a coach in the mind-body community, and partly because he did such a good job getting through it himself. Okay. Rudy says, I'll definitely leave you a good review. It's just taking time to read it because I want to understand it clearly. You know what? Thank you, Rudy, for reading it clearly, and all the better. When you leave a review, it's going to be all the better because you will have read it thoroughly. Maria Llewellyn says, Dan, when will the group membership open? It's open. It's ready. I wish I could just put a link in somewhere. You know what? Let me get the link. I think I can put it in here. Here it is, the $100 membership. So what I'll do is I'll put it in YouTube, and I will also put it in Instagram. Here's the link from an Instagram standpoint, and here it is in YouTube. If you're interested in joining, we can get started on Monday. We'll dive right in. Okay? Thanks for asking, Maria. Okay. I don't know if I said hi to CJet and NKIMC. Thank you for joining us here on Instagram. You're coming in towards the end here, but hopefully you heard some good stuff about mind-body experience. And I'm here every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Okay, Maria Llewellyn said, weird cramping, heavy feeling in legs, mind-body. All other symptoms like migraines, back pain, and stomach almost resolved. Yes, that sounds like mind-body for sure. But let me just put in a plug for something. Mind-body symptoms can be any symptom. Anything the body can do physically, the mind can use it. And especially if it feels like it's weird, it's coming out of nowhere. And on top of that, if you've already had a lot of mind-body symptoms and mastered them, and then this came up, that's what Dr. Sarno called the symptom imperative, where new symptoms come in to take the place of old ones. This very much sounds like mind-body. Catherine Toomer says, but I could probably act as though there is not a right decision. That could free me up nicely. I think what you can do, Catherine, is recognize there's no way for us to know what the right decision is. And what we can do is stay in our power and know we made it. We made a good decision based on what we could see at that time, and we can still make good things from it. Max Flamma then says, it's chilling how deeply I resonate with your description of the formula for a neuroplastic feedback loop. Healing off of an Instagram live. Wow. So I'm really glad it describes it well. Whether you have a neuroplastic feedback loop or not, it doesn't matter from the vantage point that you can get better from this. What I like to say, though, is that they just have slightly different treatment protocols. And I know how to do each one. But the number one thing I can tell you, no matter what, whether you got neuroplastic feedback loop or regular mind-body symptoms, is bring down your doubt as low as possible. Get clear on what's happening, and you'll get better faster. VBNS says, my inflammation has been a long time with blood pooling. I had severe pain 3 years ago and very tested this. Every test. I actually lost track of what you said here. I had severe pain 3 years ago, and I'm not sure what you're saying here. This has developed over the last year. Something new has developed over the last year. Listen, we can make sense of whatever it is. And I have an overarching thing that I say about symptoms. You make sense and your symptoms make sense. And when we get to what that sense is, you'll feel a lot calmer. Okay, Rita says, I was kidding about the massage, but the chain massage envy does suck. Oh, well, okay. I hear you, Rita. Anything that causes doubt, that's the problem. If you can do it otherwise and it feels good, do it. Catherine Toomer says, yes, that sounds very good. I'll go for it. Thank you, Dan. It's my pleasure. I do want to remind you guys again, two resources that don't cost you much. Get the book. on Amazon. It'll tell you everything you need to know. It took so long to write this book because if I couldn't write it any better than this, I sometimes I pick it up and I'm like, it's exactly how I want it to be. So I'd go to Amazon, get that book. The other thing you can do, join my $100 membership. Come see me. And if you do it in combination, it's even better because then you know the system and you can work with me on a regular basis. You can come 3 times a week. If you can only come once a week, it's still a great bargain. And these groups can go up to 2 hours in length, depending on how many people are there. So we're talking about 24 hours with me a month for $100. That's quite a value, I would say. So, and I'm helping lots of people. The groups are running really well. All right, we're going to finish up on this. Nox Flamma said the acute emotional event and convincing physical event. Wild. So much insight in layman's terms. You are the doubt crusher. Thank you, Nox Flamma. Thank you so much for the high praise, everybody. It means so much to me that this is helping so many people. And I'm just going to keep it up. VB Ness says, is the book on audio? It's going to be on audio. And I had planned to get it out earlier, but unfortunately I had certain things, including reorganizing my groups, that had to come before it. I'm going to start recording that audio book in the next couple of weeks. It's going to take a couple months probably to get done with all that I have going on otherwise, but it is coming out on audio. All right. And it'll be me reading it. Okay, guys, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. And let's just keep up the good work. Keep the questions coming. I'll keep the answers coming, and I will see you next week. All right. Take care.